agree with Trump likening him having to pay his fine in the New York civil fraud trial to the killing of Alexei Navalny?
Yeah, I think the one thing we can get out of the judgment in New York is that every business person who fears for the future of their business because of the absolute oppressive nature of the courts in New York, they are now considering leaving the state. It is absolutely insane that you would see that kind of judgment coming out of
But what about the comparison to Alexei Navalny? What about specifically the comparison to Navalny?
Candidate, do you have anything to say about that?
You can always tell when a dishonest politician is faced with a question they really don't want to answer after they dodge it the first time. They run away like Tim Scott did here. He loves him some Donald Trump.
You must really hate her. No, it's a shame. It's a shame. Uh-oh.
I just love you.
No, that's why he's a great politician.
So Scott refuses to admit that the post about Navalny's murder that both covered for Putin and made himself out to be a martyr is disgusting. The sudden death of Alexei Navalny has made me more and more aware of what's happening in our country. It's a slow, steady progression with crooked, radical left politicians, prosecutors, and judges leading us down a path to destruction. Open borders, rigged elections, and grossly unfair courtroom decisions are destroying America. We are a nation in decline, a failing nation. MAGA 2024. The sudden death of Alexei Navalny, as if he was involved in a tragic car accident or something, illustrates just how comfortable he is kneeling for Putin and his interests. And Tim Scott is even more comfortable kneeling to a subservient Trump. So since the former president introduced it, conservatives are submissively running with it.
Do you see yourself as a potential political prisoner in the United States, because that's their goal, is to put you in jail behind your bars, for the rest of your life?
If I were losing in the polls, they wouldn't even be talking about me, and I wouldn't have had any legal fees.
If you had retired from politics, would all these cases...
If I were out, I think, although they hate me so much, I think if I got out, they'd still, let's pursue this guy. We can't stand this guy. Look, I won an election that wasn't supposed to be winnable. I then did much better the second time. I won't get into it, but I did because of Fox. But I did a much better job the second time. We got millions and millions of more votes the second time. And now we're doing much better than we did the second time and the first time, almost put together.
Are you a potential political prisoner, sir?
Well, I think because of the fact that I'm doing so well, that I'm beating Biden at a level that they've never seen before. This is not supposed to happen. You know, it's much easier for a Democrat to run. Much easier than
All right, we're going to take a quick break.
As soon as they went to break, she was like, Mr. President, remember we talked about promoting you as a political prisoner to ratchet up the talking point that Biden is the fascist and not you? Laura Ingraham tried to stick to the propaganda, but Donnie was stuck in a loop about how much better he is than Biden, so they didn't even get the answer that they were looking for. His daughter-in-law, who's looking like she's going to take over the RNC to keep it in the Trump family's acquisitions, also knows the number one rule in Trump world is to avoid angering Putin.
And do you believe that Putin is responsible for the death of Navalny?
I don't know enough to comment on that.
Do you think
Putin? Navalny? Never heard of him. There actually is a Republican or two that had a problem with Trump's comparison, but I get the feeling that this one would have been on board with it about a year ago anyway.
And he's talking about how he's a victim, and he's comparing himself to Navalny because he's in a court case where Navalny lost his life to Putin because he was, fighting him on corruption. It's all about him. It's been the problem with Donald Trump. He is obsessed with himself. And now with these court cases, and I don't blame him, you owe $500 million. That's a pretty big tab that you've got to pay that he's going to have to focus on that. I'm focused on the American people.
Nikki Haley's really outraged. Outraged right before she pointed out that she doesn't really blame Trump for centering himself because of the consequences for his illegal activities. She just can't fully detach from piggybacking Trump's grievances, even though her handlers have told her that she has to attack Trump. Maybe failed GOP presidential candidate Asa Hutchinson could come up with a word or two about Trump's disrespectful ego since his political career seems to be over.
The New York Times published letters from prison from Alexei Navalny. And one of the things he said in one of the letters published by the Times was he's really scared. He was really scared about the prospect of another Trump presidency. And now you hear Donald Trump comparing himself to Alexei Navalny. How does that sit with you?
Well, it's offensive to me. And there should be common decency, first of all, a respect for Alexei Navalny that gave his life for freedom and fighting against a dictator. There should be respect for that. And there should also be a clear understanding that Putin is responsible and that Putin is bad for Russia. He's bad for anybody that loves freedom. And the United States should be having a clear voice. And Donald Trump is offensive in his language. He can't accept the fact that Navalny gave his life for freedom. He tries to compare himself to that, which is a false comparison, and it's offensive. And people need to wake up and realize this is what our foreign policy is going to be like if he gets 4 years.
Democratic Representative Jamie Raskin gave some extra background to what Trump thought of Navalny's opposition to Putin that eventually led to his death.
Donald Trump, as president, never did a thing to help Alexei Navalny or any human rights dissidents and protesters in Russia. All he did was curry favor with Vladimir Putin and call him a genius and brilliant and hail his various attacks on human rights and other countries' sovereignty. And even out of office, he never said a word for Alexei Navalny or did anything to help him. So, where does he get off trying to compare himself to a real hero of freedom and human rights who stood up against Donald Trump's bosom buddy, Vladimir Putin? Donald Trump's not going to confuse anybody with that.